This week, I am preaching a message entitled, Cast Your Nets. Cast your nets. I'm excited to jump in. You guys ready to go? You ready? All right, let's jump in together. We're gonna pray and then we're gonna hop in. Lord, thank you for these moments that we get to share together as a community. God, we're thankful for these moments that we get to hear from your word. And we ask that you challenge us, change us, rearrange us, mold us, and shape us. Do whatever it is that you desire to do in us. And God, we're grateful that leaving tonight, we will leave better than what we walked in. We're grateful for it. We give you the honor and the glory in Jesus' name. Everyone agree with it? Said, amen, amen. Hey, we're gonna play a little game. I'm gonna share some statistics, some numbers. I want you to raise your hand if you believe it's true. I'm just gonna give you this first one. The first one is 100% true. So you can just raise your hand for this first one. There are 30,000 college students among major universities in the Stark-Summit County area. Yeah, everyone can raise your hand. That is true. You just keep your hand up, and then you can drop it whenever you feel like it's not true. You're not telling the truth. You're lying, all right? So that's how it's gonna work. Just keep your hand up until you think that I'm a liar. Does that sound good? All right. There are 35,000 students, college students in the general Stark-Summit area among major universities. 35,000. 30, 35 now. How about 40,000? 45,000. You can drop it whenever you feel like I'm a liar. 43,000. 50,001. 55,000. 57,000. All right, now they're starting to drop. 58,250. 59,100. 60,000. Well, we're gonna stop right there because that is the number of college students that are in this general area. 60,000. 60,000 just among major universities in the general Stark-Summit area. 60,000. I don't think I could count to 60,000. 60,000 college students. That's a really big number, right? That's like a really substantial number. Here's what that number represents to me: a rich harvest in our city. What that number represents to me is not just a really big, audacious, bold number that might even scare some of us when we think about it, like 60,000, wow, might blow some of our minds. What that number represents to me is a rich harvest. What that number represents to me is a lot of souls that are not in this room right now. What that number represents to me is that there is a simple fraction of a percentage in this room compared to the number of college students that are in our general area. And many of which, majority of which, have never experienced the love of Jesus Christ. Many of which have never been introduced to the hope that's found in him. That many of us, majority of us maybe even in this room, have experienced for ourselves. What that number represents to me is a lot of work that we have to do. What that number represents to me is the work that you and I have to do. What that number also represents to me, though, is that we are defying the odds and defying the statistics. Just so you know, we are not the majority. Yeah, there might not be 60,000 people in this room, but you're in the room. You're in the room. You have prioritized at some level, even if you are here for the first time and this is your first time at church, your first time at the U, your first time at Faith Family, you are in the room, and there's something to be said about that. Aren't you grateful that you're in the room? Aren't you just grateful to be in the seat? Aren't you just grateful to be surrounded by people that are gonna encourage you in your faith and challenge you in your faith and push you to become more like Jesus, which is the ultimate goal of our existence? I'm grateful for that. But that number, if a fraction of that statistic, a fraction of a percentage of that overall number is in this room right now, what it tells me is that we all have some work to do. That we gotta roll up our sleeves because there are 60,000 among major universities. The likelihood is that there are way more, if you want to include online students, if you want to include people that go to minor universities, smaller universities, just among major universities, 60,000 students. And the likelihood is that for all of us, we know a pretty good chunk of them. Not all 60, but all of us have a sphere of influence. All of us know somebody who's far from God but close to us. All of us do. We all know somebody. You might be wondering, what's the likelihood? 60,000 students. What's the likelihood of someone actually being willing to come to church or give God a shot? What's the likelihood? You know what's interesting? Lifeway Christian Research, they collected some data. Now again, this is a study, a poll. These are numbers. They don't necessarily mean that this is the truth for our area or for our church, but these are simple statistics based on a survey that was done. And it's so interesting. They said that 82% of people would be somewhat willing to go to church if invited. 82%. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that 82% said they would be willing to go to church if they were invited? You know, this next statistic, though, is interesting. And though it may be reality for the majority of America, I do believe that our church, our community, has defied this statistic. That we're not just categorized and lumped into every statistic that's shown or given. I believe we're different in this way. But this next one is interesting. And again, I'm not saying that this is the absolute truth and this is Bible, but these are simple statistics. These are surveys that were done. And they surveyed a large grouping of people. But this next one can be a little alarming. 82% of people said they'd be willing to go to church if invited, but only 2% of churchgoers actually invite people to church. 2%. 2%. That statistic to me seems a little alarming. I'm grateful that when I look in this room, though, I do see people that are defying that odd and defying that statistic. However, this is a reality that maybe the harvest is more prepared than the workers are to go and do the work. Maybe the harvest is more receptive than what the workers claim. That maybe us as followers of Jesus, because Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. What he was saying is there's a rich harvest. There's many people that do not know me, have not come in contact with me, don't know the hope that's found in me, have not discovered the depths of my love for them. There's a rich harvest, a vibrant harvest, a big harvest, but the workers, the laborers are few. This is what Jesus said. I think Jesus recognized that for some of us, man, we might be tempted to believe the lie and the myth that people just don't want anything to do with God anymore. People just don't want anything to do with our faith. Did you know that in the heart of every man, every woman, is a holy curiosity that God placed there because their original design is son and daughter of God. So even though you may be tempted to believe that they don't want anything to do with your faith, they don't want anything to do with your beliefs, they don't want anything to do with what you are a part of, they don't want anything to do with your church, can I tell you, there's a holy curiosity on the inside of every man and every woman, and that's because at the very core of their existence and their nature, they are children of God. That's who they are. So when we simply share our faith with somebody or we invite someone to church, what we're doing is we're giving them the opportunity to align their belief with who they actually are. We're actually just introducing people to the mystery, unlocking the truth behind that question that they've had their entire life. Why does it always feel like no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, no matter how often I spend, how long I spend trying to work on myself and figure out why I have all these issues and these problems, what if all of a sudden when they come in contact with Jesus, all of that stuff seems to make sense? You know why I know this is true? It was true for me. And it was true for so many of us. Confused. North was south, south was north, east was west, west was east, right was left, left was right, until we met Jesus. And then all of a sudden, all of the questions, the confusion. All of a sudden, Jesus starts to bring clarity to our lives because we simply got aligned with the one who designed us, aligned with the one who created us, aligned finally with the one who created our very nature, aligned finally with the one who breathed the very breath into our lungs that we possess, finally aligned with the one who designed us, that all of a sudden things start to make sense. Isn't it funny that the moment you meet Jesus, things just seem to make sense? Things just made sense. Things clicked. It's because when we meet Jesus and we discover his love for us, what we actually discover is our very nature from the beginning. We just discover who we actually were the whole time. Maybe we just didn't realize it. But 82% of people, man, why is it so important to invite people to church? I want to remind you of something really fast. I want to remind you that church attendance does not lead you to salvation. Let's not get that twisted, not even for a minute, when we're talking about inviting people to church. We believe in the value of it. You know why church is important? Jesus bled and died for his church. And I've heard it said this way before. Chris Hodges said this. He said, the local church is not the hope of the world. The local church mobilized is the hope of the world. A dead church is not a vibrant church. A dead church is not a church moving, but a church that's mobilized and a church that sees the cause of Christ as the most valuable thing. That is a church that's alive and vibrant and a church that's meeting its community's needs. That is the kind of church I want to be a part of. And I'm grateful that at Faith Family we are. We're a part of a church that's alive, not dead. A church that seeks the lost and those that are broken and dead in their sin, not just a church that's standing on the sidelines. But Jesus said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. You know what's interesting? He didn't say, I will just build you up in your personal faith. The gates of hell won't prevail against you. How often do we take this attitude? Me and God, I don't need anybody else. Me and God are cool. We're on the same page. Me and God are straight. It's like, what does that even mean? What are you talking about? It's so easy to believe this lie. And you know what's interesting is that the enemy can teach us half-truths. He can get you to believe something that seems like it's the truth, but it's actually a lie. You know what one of those half-truths are that the enemy will try and tell you? That you can walk out your faith alone. It's a half-truth. Because yeah, your relationship with God is between you and God, but you were never designed to do it by yourself. You were never built by God to do it alone. And all of a sudden we start saying things like, oh yeah, man, it's me and God. I don't need the church. Man, the church, that place is full of a bunch of broken people. People that say they're perfect, but they're not. Can I just encourage you? Anywhere that you go, you're gonna find people just like you. Imperfect, fractured, not perfect at all, at any level. And no matter what church you go to, you're just gonna keep finding people like that give you a reason to wanna leave. But this is the reason why we have to just vow and commit and determine that we know where God's called us to be, because if we know where God's called us to be, it doesn't matter when we come in contact with people that frustrate us. It doesn't matter when we come in contact with people within the confines of the church, not a building, not a construct, people. That is what the church is. This building is not the church. This room is not the church. The ones sitting in these seats, we are the church. And you will never find a perfect body. There's gonna be blemishes. There's gonna be wrinkles and spots. There's gonna be fractures and cracks. So you better get used to being a part of a body that's a little cracked and a little fractured, and being okay knowing that you are also a part of that body. You're never gonna find one. No matter how hard you try. You can go to another one, you can try another one out. You're always gonna find the same common denominator. The churches are full of people that are broken. But there's one thing that unifies us, our desperate need for Jesus. There's one thing that we all hold in common in this room. We all have a desperate need for Jesus. I need Jesus. We all need Jesus. Daily. Not just a one-time moment of visitation from God where he resurrects us from our sin and gives us a guaranteed eternity with him when we die. No. daily, every single day. I need Jesus. We need Jesus. Why is it so important to invite people to church? Because Jesus clearly bled and died for his church. And he said the gates of hell will not prevail against his church, his bride. The gates of hell will not prevail against the unified believers, the body of believers that are unified in purpose, in spirit, and in truth. We're not perfect, we're not blemishless, but man, I'll tell you what, there's something about getting around a group of people that aren't going to criticize you for what you've done or criticize you for your mistakes, but embrace you lovingly. This is not cultural. This is countercultural. The gospel is not cultural. It's countercultural, inviting and embracing people in their mess and in their despair. That is the love of our Jesus. That is the love of our King. It is embracing people in their mess and inviting them into an opportunity to have a real relationship with God. Man, that is the gospel. Why is it important to invite people to church? Church attendance is not what saves them, but I'll tell you what, anytime that I step foot in the house of God, I can't help but get this sense that God is alive and not dead. I can't help but get this sense that my God is moving. He's moving through the lives of people that are in those seats, hearing the testimonies and the stories of what God did for one, and I know now that he can do it for me. There's something about getting around a group of people. There's something about getting in church. There's something about what happens on weekends, on Wednesdays, in groups, in smaller settings. There's something about what God can do. There's something that shifts on the inside of us. There's something about the local church. There's something about it. And Jesus said, I will build my church. So why is it so important to invite people? Why is it so critical? Man, because when we gather together, we get a glimpse of how alive our God really is. We get a glimpse. Aren't you grateful that our message is not about a God of our past, but a God of our present and our future? Barna did a study with 13 to 17-year-olds. I just shared this in the United. Barna did a study with 25,000 13 to 17-year-olds. They found the common theme and the common thread with a lot of students who believed in Jesus. Maybe they did or didn't. There was an overwhelming percentage of students that whether they even believed in the deity of Christ or not, a large percentage, even of the ones who believed in God, believed that Jesus was a Jesus of the past, not the present. That God was a God of the past, not the present. That, yes, those things happened, but he doesn't really have much to do with my life today. Yes, that might be something that happened in the past. That might be what Jesus did then, but it's not what he's doing now. Aren't you grateful that we serve a God who is more than alive? Aren't you grateful that we serve a God who is not a God of our past? He's a God of our present and a God of our future. I'm grateful that I get to introduce people to a God who is on the move, a God who is working behind the scenes, a God who is working overtime, double time, triple time, a God who is constantly speaking. The question is, are we listening? A God who is speaking, a God who is alive, a God who is active. Man, that's the God I get to point people to. Ooh, that's the God I get to point people to. I get to introduce people to a God who is more than alive. Not dead. Not a God of the past, a God of my present, and a God of our future. Man, I'm grateful for the reality of who our God is. Hebrews 10, 23 through 25 says this: let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm. For God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. You know, Jesus was the best at witnessing to people. There was no one better. Jesus was the best at it. And I'm going to share a scripture with you where Jesus, at the very beginning of his earthly ministry, he is assembling the disciples and he is commissioning them to follow after him. In Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 18, we're going to read out of this text. Here's what it says. One day as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. This is critical to understand the implications of this text. They fished for a living. This was their job. They weren't just out on a little fishing trip. They weren't just out deep sea fishing for a couple minutes. This was their job. This was their livelihood. They did this every day. This was not something they just picked up randomly. This was their everyday activity. This was their rhythm. This is the equivalent of whatever job you work, or maybe you go to school. It is their rhythm. So they are in their rhythm. They're in the sync of their week. They are doing what they do, and they do it every day. This is what they did for a living. They fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. They left their nets at once and followed him. Jesus literally asked these two young men to leave everything. Everything. Their livelihood, their occupation, their families. He asked them to leave everything. Everything. This is ultimately the cost of following Jesus. He asked them to leave everything behind. Leave your security in having those wages that you get every time you go out and fish. Leave your security in having this nice, comfortable, cushioned life. Leave your security in worldly things. Leave your security in your occupation. Leave your security in your success. Leave your security in what other people think about you. Leave your security in all of those things. None of them matter. None of them even come close to comparing to the infinite value of following me. He asks them to leave everything on a dime. And I am astounded. Really, I'm astounded by how quickly they dropped it. I'm astounded. When I read this, I'm just trying to put myself in the story for a moment. This is the equivalent of Jesus showing up when you're in the middle of your theology class or your English class or flipping those burgers at McDonald's, working at Quaker Steak. I don't know where you work. This is the equivalent of Jesus stepping into the middle of your rhythm, what you do every day. These guys were in their rhythm. This is what they did every single day. This was not just a fun activity. This was their job. This was their occupation. They were responsible for things. They held responsibilities. They were accountable to people. And in a moment, they dropped everything to follow Jesus. If I were one of the disciples, I might have just asked a couple questions. Okay, Jesus, you want us to follow you. How long? When am I gonna be back? Should I get some of my vacation time and put it in? Should I let my parents know? Should I pack a bag? Do I need some socks? Where are we going? None of that. But there was such a confident trust in Jesus. They said, all right, wherever you're gonna go, we'll go. They dropped everything. They dropped everything. But man, how often I think of Jesus. And when I think about what he did, there's no way that Jesus was unaware of what he was asking them to step away from. And I think Jesus offers us tremendous insight into a battle that we all face. Because the truth is, just like Jesus, we cannot allow inconvenience to become our excuse. How often do we just create excuses for people that we don't want to invite to church or share our faith with because we're like, they're busy. Man, they got a lot on their plate. They got a busy schedule. I don't know, it just seems hard to find time. They got like sports and, they're doing their thing, and I just don't want to infringe on, what they're doing. I just don't want to be a burden to them. Jesus, he didn't consider himself a burden for one moment. He was asking these guys to leave everything, but it's because Jesus recognized that what he was asking them to step away from paled in comparison to what he was asking them to step into. Paled in comparison to the infinite value of following after him. He knew he recognized, I'm not being a burden to them. I'm giving them an opportunity to experience their breakthrough. I'm giving them an opportunity to step into their purpose. I'm giving these guys an opportunity to do what they were destined and designed to do. I'm giving these guys an opportunity right now. I'm not a burden, and this is not an inconvenience. We have to get to the point as followers of Jesus that we do not look at our invitation or asking someone to get coffee and talk about Jesus as an inconvenience. You are not an inconvenience. You know why? Their eternity is not inconvenient. Their soul, that's important. Their eternity is important. It is not an inconvenience. Even if it feels like an inconvenience, we have to remind ourselves how great it is to follow Jesus. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves and let the Spirit of God remind us how great it is, the infinite value of following Him, the blessing of following Jesus, the security we have in Him, the freedom you discovered in Him. When was the last time you remembered how great it is to follow Jesus? My encouragement and my commission for you tonight is we need to stop in our tracks if we've allowed inconvenience to be the reason why we create an excuse to not invite someone to church or talk about Jesus or go grab coffee with someone and share our story. It is no longer a good enough excuse. You know why? Because their eternity matters way more. Their eternity matters way more than the sport they're playing. Their eternity matters way more than the inconvenience you feel like you're creating for their schedule. Their eternity matters more than that meeting they're a part of. I'm not saying that's not important, but I'm saying their eternity matters more. Their eternity matters more than their school schedule. Our eternity matters more than anything else. Nothing matters more. Nothing matters more than discovering the love that's found in Jesus. Nothing matters more. And sometimes we just have to remind ourselves that there is nothing greater than following Him. And maybe for some of us, we just forgot that there's nothing greater than following Him. We have to stop seeing ourselves as an inconvenience. Because if the church continues to see itself as an inconvenience, we're gonna miss out on an opportunity with a ripe harvest. A harvest that, according to the statistics, said that they are pretty willing if someone would simply invite them. And I would imagine pretty willing to hear your story about how God impacted your life. I would imagine pretty willing to sit down and have coffee if you pay for it. Here's a simple rule of thumb. If you ask someone to go get coffee or go to lunch, you pay. I'm serious. You pay. If you're taking them out, you pay. I have a rule of thumb. Our team knows this. I literally just said it to Devin today. I have a rule. If I'm taking you out and I ask you to go, I'm paying. You know why? Because that communicates value. And it's the little things, right? So take some out to coffee. Say, hey, bro, let's get coffee. But don't like sneak in 3 minutes later so they already bought their coffee and then you're like, sweet, all right, I'm good. Believe God for that extra $5 if you need to. I know, finance can be tight, especially in college. But for real, invite someone to coffee. Tell them your story. What did God do in your life? You know why the Israelites started wandering for so long? It's because the generation before them stopped telling them. The generation before them stopped telling them. Eventually, they stopped telling the story. Can I caution all of us in this room? We cannot stop telling the story. The story can't stop with us. You can't stop telling the story of what God did in your life. What does He mean to you? Who is He to you? How did He set you free? What was that struggle that you had that He completely released you from? What was that bondage that you were dealing with that He released you from? What was that struggle that He turned around for your good? What's your story? we can't stop telling the story. Get coffee with somebody. Go to lunch. Go meet at a park if you don't want to pay for their coffee. Go sit on a bench. Anything. Because the story that you have to tell is too important. And the story that you have is significant. Even if your story is simply this: I've been going to church my whole life, and I one day decided my faith is my own. Can I tell you how powerful that story is? Quit belittling your story because it doesn't sound the same as the person next to you. Quit belittling the story you have to tell. Quit belittling or underselling what you have to share, because you have the greatest story to share. It is your personal story and your personal testimony of how you went from being a dead person to being alive in Christ. There is no better story. Did you know you were a dead person before Jesus? You weren't just a bad person, you were a dead person. I was dead before I knew Jesus. I wasn't just bad. Jesus didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive. That's our message. And that's the message you get to tell. But there's a world that's desperately waiting for us to say it. Jesus had a few things going for him. He had a cause, number one. Jesus had a cause. And he was convinced that his cause was the most important cause. Matthew 28:18-20 says, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this: I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Jesus was so clear on his cause. He knew that his cause was people. His cause was those that are lost and dead in their sin. His cause were sons and daughters that just didn't know their nature yet, that just didn't know who they really were, that didn't know their inheritance in Christ, that didn't know who Jesus was yet. His cause was clear. I wonder how big heaven can become when we all simply know our cause. When we all know that we have the same cause. Your cause is not just your job. Your cause is not just the school you go to. Your cause is not the amount of money that you make. Those are all nice things. Those aren't bad things. Don't stop doing those things. But your primary cause is the people at that job that you work at. Your primary cause is the people at that school that you are beside in class, that you walk by in the hallway. Your primary cause is not just getting the degree that you're getting. It's not. Your cause is the cause of Christ for people that are far from him. That is our cause, and there is no greater cause. There's no greater cause. The cause of Jesus, the cause of Christ, the hope that's found in him. He is the answer to the despair that the world is experiencing. He's the answer to the confusion people are dealing with. He's the answer to anxiety and depression rates that are going through the roof. He's the answer. He's the answer to all of it. He's the answer to every struggle and every problem that every person you face is going through. He's the one-size-fits-all solution to every struggle and problem that everyone in the world is going through. Jesus is not just a good moral figure. He's not just an upstanding citizen. He is not just a prophet. He is the Son of God. And he came to set us free from our sin. He came to bring heaven to the earth. And the way that he intends to do it is through us. All I can tell you is, if that's his plan, my answer is yes. However you want to do it, however you want to use me, God, my answer is yes. My answer is yes. I want to be a part of bringing heaven and the culture of heaven to invade and infect the earth. I want people to experience you more than anything else. I want people to come in contact with the hope that's found in you. at all costs, by any means necessary. That's our cause. Number two, Jesus had a conviction. He had a cause, but he had a conviction of his cause. He was convicted and convinced beyond everything else that his cause was the most important cause, that there was nothing he could give his time to that would be better, that there's nothing he could commit himself to that would be greater or better or create a deeper impact than his cause. And I'll tell you what, it's one thing to know your cause. It's a whole different thing to be empowered by the Spirit of God and receive a conviction from the Holy Spirit that your cause is the most important cause. You need a conviction. I need a conviction from the Holy Spirit. It's not enough to just know what's right. I have to be convicted and convinced that it is the only way. That the only true way, the only true purpose, the only true cause that I have for the rest of my life is the cause of Christ and the purpose of being used by God to impact my sphere of influence and bring people closer to Him. I got to be convinced and convicted of that cause more than anything else. There has to be a conviction in my spirit that says, no matter how exciting and exhilarating this is, no matter how much this serves me, it still doesn't serve the ultimate purpose of my life. I can have nice things, do nice things, be a part of nice things. It all pales in comparison to the primary thing. Nothing else matters as much as the true cause of Christ and the conviction that we have that our cause is the most important thing. Jesus had a cause, he had a conviction, and therefore in turn he had a confidence. He had a confidence. But the confidence simply came from the conviction he had. You will be confident if you are a branch connected to the vine. You will have confidence if you stay connected to the Holy Spirit. You will have confidence. Confidence will be the residue of your life. We don't just muster up confidence. Confidence comes from Him and Him alone. So some of you have been trying to fight, scratch, and claw for confidence to do it. Maybe the problem is you haven't been spending enough time in prayer to get linked up with the Holy Spirit so you can have a conviction about your cause, and therefore, in turn, the residue of your life, the overflow of your life is a confidence that exudes from you. Man, you'll get confidence when you spend time to be with Him. You won't have to try to be confident. Confidence will come off of you. Confidence will exude from your life. Confidence will be the overflow and the residue of your life because you spent time with the Holy Spirit. So we have to spend time connected to the vine if we want to live the life of purpose, if we want to uphold our cause in the way that God has called us to uphold our cause. We have to spend time to be with Him. But all I know is this: it's time to cast our nets. It's time to cast our nets. It's time to cast our natural nets down. In Mark chapter 1, it says that they left their nets immediately. They left the comfort and the convenience, the things that we like to hold on to, right? They forsook, they neglected, they considered as nothing their reputation, what it would cost them, maybe the selfish desires they had to build a livelihood and build their fishing business. I'm not saying that's not important, but are you willing to cast your net down? Are you willing to throw the things aside that might seem important to you, but ultimately are not the most important thing? Are you willing to lay down how you look when you step out and you invite someone to church? Are you willing to put down and lay aside how you look? Are you willing to lay down your personal image? Are you willing to lay down how people view you? Are you willing to lay down people's perception of you? Are you willing to lay down popularity? Are you willing to lay all of those things down? Are you willing to starve your natural desires so that you can fully commit to the most important cause of your life? They casted their nets. They left everything. Are you willing to leave it all? Are you willing to leave your security in natural things to go all in with Him? Are you willing to say no to that great opportunity because you know that God has called you to be right where you're at? Are you willing to say no to that job opportunity that's gonna make you more money, but you know in your spirit that it's not the right one because God placed you right here, right now for such a time as this because of the people that are at that job you're working? Are you willing to say no to it? Are you willing? Are you willing to lay those things down that we hold on to? Are you willing to lay down your personal preferences? Are you willing to lay down how you look or the appearance that you have? Are you willing to lay down all of those things for the sake of going after Jesus and going after his people? Are you willing? Are you willing to cast your nets down, your natural nets? And are you willing to cast your spiritual nets out? Because we got to cast our natural nets down. We have to put our preferences aside. But man, we are coming into a time now. The harvest is plentiful. It's plentiful. It's here. People are ready. People are eager and hungry to know the truth. I'm convinced that more people than maybe we believe are hungry and desperate for something real. They're hungry and desperate for something that lasts. They're hungry and desperate for someone who will never change. They're hungry and desperate for some stability. They're hungry and desperate for a firm foundation. They're hungry and desperate. The question is, are we going to satisfy the hunger that they have and introduce them to Jesus? Are we going to lay the things down that we need to lay down so that we can fully commit to the most important cause of our life? The cause of going after him and pointing people to him. We got to cast our natural nets down, and we got to cast our spiritual nets out. The time is now. It's never been more critical. There's never been a more critical hour or critical time for us to catch this. And my personal image doesn't matter that much. I consider my reputation as nothing for the sake of going after Jesus. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care that it might cost me some friendships. When I got serious in my faith, it cost me friendships. It cost me relationships. It cost me. But it was so worth the payment. I'd pay it every day. Because nothing even comes close to the infinite value of knowing him and doing what pleases him. Nothing. We got to cast our nets down and cast our nets out. You know why I'm here today? I'm here today because someone invited me to church. I'm gonna have the band come and join me back up here. We're gonna go back into worship here in a few minutes. Do you know why I'm here? I'm not here because I just randomly found myself at Faith Family one day. I'm not here because I was walking on the road and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, cool church, I'll give it a shot. That's some people's story, wasn't mine. No, I'm here today because there was a friend in high school that was relentless. Every time that I rejected him, told him no, he kept turning back around and inviting me to church again, sharing his faith with me. You know why I'm here today? I'm here today because someone invited me to church. You know why I'm able to say that I'm following Jesus today, that I'm doing my best to lead my marriage and my family in a godly way? The reason why I can say that I'm surrounded by a faith community, a strong faith community, it's because someone invited me to church. It's because someone did not allow my no to be the period at the end of that story. Every no that I gave, he came right back around, asked again, shared his story with me, talked about God, talked about Jesus, and eventually I gave in. Eventually, he had his way. Eventually, I said yes, and it was the best yes of my life. I'm thankful he didn't give up on me. I'm thankful he didn't stop. If it weren't for him, I don't know where I'd be. But because of his persistence, it's gonna cost you some persistence. Can I tell you? There's one friend that I invited to church for 7 years. 7. Shared my faith with him. We talked about God. 7 years. That's how long it took. But I would replay that 7 years all over again, knowing the end of the story. The problem is that for some of us, we give up too quick. We're not patient enough. We get disgruntled. We get frustrated. How patient was God with you? How patient was God with me every time that I kept rejecting and saying no? Because I wasn't just saying no to an invitation to church. I was saying no to God. Behind that invitation, I wasn't just saying no to church. I was saying no to God. How patient was God with us? How patient has God been with you? How patient should we be? But how persistent should we be? Because God has never given up on you. And thank God he never gave up on me. Who are we to give up on the people that are around us that don't know him yet, that haven't experienced him yet? Who are we to give up and throw in the towel? Thank God I had a friend that didn't give up on me. Thank God I had a friend that was persistent enough toward me that he kept showing up. He kept sharing his faith. He kept talking about Jesus. He kept inviting me to church. Thank God he was persistent. And thank God he didn't give up on me. I don't know where I'd be. I'm here today because of him. I have him to thank. I have him to thank. I'm thankful that he was persistent enough to not give up on me. He was relentless. I'm following Jesus today because of his influence. And I have now since then in turn gotten the opportunity to invite other people to church and see their lives changed because of Jesus. Not because of me, not because I'm great. My friend's great, but I know that it was Christ through him. Jesus met me through him. Who is God trying to meet through you? And will your answer be yes? Who is God trying to reach through you? And is your answer yes? Who is far from God but close to you? Who is God trying to reach and touch through you? And is your answer yes? Thank God his answer was yes. The question is, how can I become a fisher of people? You guys can stand. We're going to close up. I'm going to go through these, then we're going to worship together. We're going to give the Spirit of God some space. How can I become a fisher of people? Number 1, prayer. Genuinely pray for your friends that don't know God. You know why? Because who or what you pray for, you gain a heart for. And if you don't have a heart for your friends, start praying for your friends. If you don't have a heart for your school, pray for your school. If you don't have a heart for the people that are far from God but close to you, pray for the people that are far from God but close to you. Here's what happens. God will start to soften their heart even before you get there. And regardless of what they choose, God will do something in you. He'll give you a confidence. He'll give you a courage. He'll give you boldness. He'll give you a fortitude even if they say no. Changes you. Prayer. Pray. Presence. Be there. Show up. Keep showing up. Take an extra 10 minutes after your class and talk to them. Don't rush to your next place that you're going. Stay put for a minute. Be present. Jesus was present everywhere that he went. And he never saw people as inconveniences. Never. Even when he was going to one place, if someone stopped him, he stopped. Even though he had places to go, things to do, he never saw people as an inconvenience. People should not be an inconvenience to us. People are not an inconvenience. People are our priority, our purpose, and our cause. Be there, be present. Go get coffee, go grab lunch. Go sit on a park bench, tell them your story, tell them your testimony. Ask them questions about their life. Ask them about their story. Ask them questions about their beliefs. And genuinely listen. Be present. And the last one, persistence. Don't give up. Don't give up. Even when you're met with a no, keep loving him. Keep serving him. This is our cause. This is our cause, and there's more than just a cup of coffee on the line. People's eternities the lion.